In the dim and haunting twilight of English legend, there are stories that refuse to be buried by the passage of centuries. Some tales linger on the breath of the wind, carried between tangled boughs and over moss-dark waters. This is such a story rooted in the shadowed heart of southern Somerset, where the ancient forest, known to our forebears as the Holts, now bears the name Chedington Woods. It was here, more than 200 years ago, that the world seemed to fall away, replaced by an endless cathedral of green, silent but for the mournful calls of woodland birds and the rustle of unseen creatures. Within this living labyrinth, at the end of a steep and unforgiving road, there stood a house, a mansion, though small, built by a family whose name had become woven into the very fabric of the land. The Wingfields. Of that house, little now remains but ivy-strangled stones and a brooding silence. Yet, in its time, it was the seat of a once proud line, a place of laughter and lament, of love, and so the stories tell us, unspeakable tragedy. The last Wingfield to preside over this lonely hollow was David Wingfield, a man whose life, once illuminated by love, would be consumed by the darkest passions known to the human heart. His wife, the gentle mistress of the house, was lost to the world in the tender years of their marriage, leaving behind but a single child, Hester, the apple of her father's eye. It is here, at the threshold of their fateful story, that our journey begins, a journey through sorrow and obsession, through the cruel workings of fate and the black arts whispered of in every village tavern from South Perrott to Crewkerne, a tale in which the boundary between superstition and reality grows thin and the secrets of the woods refuse to sleep. In the years that followed the death of his beloved wife, David Wingfield was a man unmoored, adrift in sorrow, his heart a locked chamber, its key thrown to the darkness. Where once he had been known throughout the parishes for his kindness and generosity, he now retreated into solitude, drawing his daughter Hester ever closer, as if she alone might anchor him to the world he had lost. But grief, as we know, is a cunning beast. In the silent corridors of Growley House, so called by locals, though its true name now lost to time, the gentle embers of Wingfield's soul grew cold, giving way to a single, all-consuming passion. Gold. Day after day, season after season, he tended his lands not as a squire, but as a miser, hoarding every coin, every rent, every morsel of wealth, with a desperation that bordered on the unhinged. His hands grew thin and grasping. His eyes, once bright, became shrouded with suspicion. And yet, amidst this gathering gloom, there was one light left to him, Hester, his only child. She grew to be a young woman of rare beauty and gentle disposition, the mirror of her mother's lost grace. Her laughter, when it rang through the old halls, seemed almost to drive back the shadows. But as the years passed, even Hester could not escape the heavy hand of her father's fear and obsession. The house, isolated as it was among the vast woodlands of the Holts, became a prison, a world apart where time itself seemed to stagnate, and the outside world was but a rumor on the wind. Hester, her father would say, fingers clutching at the air as if already grasping invisible coins, there is naught for you beyond these woods but trouble and temptation. Gaiety is but a mask for misery. Our fortune, such as it is, must remain our secret, lest misfortune follow us through these doors. And so the house in the woods grew ever quieter, its windows staring blankly into the darkness. Within, Hester's heart began to ache with longing, a longing not for riches, but for life, for freedom, and for a father she could scarcely remember. It was upon a day heavy with rain, the woods outside weeping with the sorrow of late autumn, that Hester's unease became too great to bear. She had long suspected that her father's claims of poverty were but a shadow play masking secrets hidden in the gloom of Growley House. Whispers among the servants, hints of concealed wealth, and the hollow clink of coins in the silence of the night had all kindled the fires of her suspicion. And so it was, passing by the old man's door, that Hester heard the unmistakable chime of gold, soft, musical, sinister. The door stood ajar. Drawn as if by a spell, she peered inside. There, amidst the flicker of candlelight and the heavy gloom, sat David Wingfield, hunched and gaunt, surrounded by gleaming piles of gold. His hands, thin and feverish, caressed the coins with a possessive ecstasy, stacking them into careful rows.
Father, what are you doing?
Hester, what are you doing here? Who gave you leave to spy on me?
I heard a noise. I didn't mean to intrude. Father, what is all this? Where did it come from?
Foolish girl, do you not understand what danger you have brought upon us? This gold must be kept secret, always. You must tell no soul, Hester, not a single soul.
But you always told me we had nothing, that we were poor, that we could not afford even the simplest pleasure. Why deceive me? Why keep such a secret from your own daughter?
You know nothing of the world, child. Gold is safety, gold is power. Without it you would be at the mercy of every villain, every flatterer and thief that walks the land. I have hoarded this, not for myself, but for you, for your protection when I am gone.
Father, please, what good is gold if it costs us our peace, our happiness? Why live in fear, shut away from the world? Can't we go back to how we were before?
Before the world took everything from me, before it took your mother. No, Hester, the world has teeth. This is all that stands between us and ruin.
I only wanted to understand you. I never meant to hurt you, Father. I wish you would trust me, as I trust you.
It is trust that brings ruin. You must promise me, Hester, that this secret will never pass your lips.
I promise, Father.
In that moment, Hester saw not a miser, but a prisoner, enslaved by fear, consumed by obsession. She begged him to turn from his path, to let go of his gold, and let life and laughter return to their home. But her tears fell unheard, her pleas swallowed by the darkness that had settled upon Growley House like a shroud. Neither father nor daughter sensed the silent figure lingering in the corridor, the servant Jacob Rumsey, whose ears had greedily devoured every word, and whose mind now churned with thoughts blacker than the storm that howled beyond the walls. But even the fiercest oath spoken in darkness cannot shield a house already rotting from within. For as Hester and her father quarrelled in sorrow and fear, the third presence in Growley House, Jacob Rumsey, the trusted servant, nursed ambitions as poisonous as any curse. Jacob, whose eyes missed nothing and whose soul had long been corroded by envy, had heard every word exchanged that night. Greed, that most ancient of evils, now took root in his heart. But it was not Jacob's ambition alone that would seal the fate of the Wingfields, for just beyond the tangled border of the Holts, another malign spirit waited, one driven by vengeance and by the old terrors whispered on moonless nights. At the edge of South Perrott, in a hovel rank with herbs and secrets, dwelled Alice Dirk, the wise woman, the witch. Once tolerated as a reader of fortunes and a healer of ills, she had earned the enmity of David Wingfield, who had cast her from his door with bitter words. To some, she was a figure of pity, to others, a living curse. Alice was not alone. She had a son, Abel, a brute who carried violence in his blood and would sell his very soul for a handful of coins. To these two, Jacob now crept, seeking alliance and promising a share in whatever treasure could be wrenched from the miser's iron grasp. The pact was sealed not in blood, but in venomous whispers beneath the dripping eaves of Alice's cottage. "He loves his gold, does he?" The old woman cackled, her voice like the creak of a coffin hinge. "But does he love it more than his only daughter? Let us see, Jacob, let us see. I have ways to pale the maiden's cheek, to steal her sleep and fill her nights with horrors. You will help me, and when the house is broken, the gold shall be ours." So the web was spun, and the plot set in motion, a scheme born of greed, revenge, and the dark powers lurking just beneath the surface of Somerset's haunted woods. The air grew thick, as if the trees themselves sensed the wickedness soon to unfold.
Sing to the mire, brewing mischief, blood and desire. A charm for your lover, a hex for your foe. Cross your heart and run, dear, for the night is all aglow. Witch hazel, come a-winding through the trees. A witch hazel with the moon's pale melodies. Ash and bone, feather and stone, turn the world upside down. Witch hazel, you'll never leave these woods alone. There's a crooked path where the hounds won't roam, under twist of elder and ancient loam. By the glow of a fox, fire's silver gleam, the wise and wild gather, or so it's whispered in a dream. They dance with shadows, sing to the mire, brewing mischief, blood and desire. A charm for your lover, a hex for your foe. Cross your heart and run, dear, for the night is all aglow. Witch hazel, come a-winding through the trees. A witch hazel with the moon's pale melodies. Ash and bone, feather and stone, turn the world upside down. Witch hazel, you'll never leave these woods alone. Mistress of midnight, with nettle and knife, she'll bind you to bracken, unmoor your life. She'll kiss your brow with the bramble's sting, and you'll wake by dawn with the fox's reign. So hearken, my darling, to the blackbird's call. Don't tarry by the thorn or the ivied wall, for the world is turning, the night is long. Witch hazel is waiting, you'll hear her in the song. Witch hazel, come a-winding through the trees. Witch hazel with the moon's pale melodies. Ash and bone, feather and stone, turn the world upside down. Witch hazel, you'll never leave these woods, you'll never leave these woods alone.
Deep in the throes of plot and evil, Abel and his mother, Alice, concocted and agreed upon the plan at the witch's cottage in South Perrott. Something very bad was coming.
Oh, we'll teach that miser the price of scorn, won't we, Abel? He locked his gold away, but he can't lock out the darkness. Not my darkness.
You fancy you'll scare him, old girl? I'd rather nick the gold and be done. Still, I do like a bit of theatre. Hester's a pretty thing. Shame to waste her on this lot.
First we'll sicken the girl. A touch of nightmare, a pinch of fever. See how the miser wrings his hands when his darling's taken by shadows. When he's desperate, he'll pay. And if he won't?
If he won't, we pinch the girl. Hide her deep in the woods. Let him choose gold or blood. Even misers can't take it with them, Mum.
He'll wish he never crossed Alice Dirk, mark me. That chest of his will be ours, and the world'll learn what it means to slight a wise woman.
Just don't forget your promise, Ma. Gold for you, little fun for me. I'll have the girl, or I'll have the gold. Either way, we'll dance tonight.
Oh, we'll dance, my love, we'll dance by the light of his burning world.
Under a sky bruised with storm clouds, Alice Dirk set out from her cottage, her shadow trailing long across the muddy lanes. She had wrapped herself in her oldest shawl, her gnarled fingers clutching a small packet of powder, her remedy. For it was decided. She would confront the miser himself, and if words would not open the way, then curses and craft would do. At the door of Growley House, she found David Wingfield harder than stone, his face set in lines of suspicion and loathing. "Begone, hag," he thundered as she pleaded for Hester. "Take your poison elsewhere. You'll find no easy prey in this house." But Alice only smiled, slow, thin, the smile of a viper. "You'll rue this day, miser," she croaked. "You, your gold, and your precious daughter." Jacob, ever the actor, ushered her away for show. But once beyond Wingfield's sight, Alice pressed the powder into his palm, her eyes bright with malice. "Mix it into her food, boy," she hissed, "and watch the misery begin. She'll waste away night by night, unless your master pays. And if he will not, there are crueler games we can play." Jacob returned to the house, heart pounding with guilt and excitement. But at the moment of truth, standing in the chill kitchen with Hester's supper before him, his hand would not obey. Perhaps it was a flicker of conscience, or perhaps it was the gentle way Hester had always spoken to him. The powder stayed hidden, and the plan for a moment faltered. Yet the shadow had fallen. Within a week, calamity descended upon the house. The horse was found dead in its stable, the cattle and sheep sickened and perished, and Hester herself confessed to her father that her nights were plagued by visions, hideous dreams that gnawed at her spirit and robbed her of sleep. Jacob, playing his part, murmured warnings of curses and evil eyes, and urged Hester to plead with her father for the old woman's mercy. But Hester, brave in her misery, refused to yield. "I will not buy peace with gold," she told him softly. "Let the world believe what it will. I will not bow to shadows." But outside, in the woods and lanes, Jacob, Alice, and Abel plotted their next move. For misery had begun to gnaw at Growley House, and the taste of vengeance had only sharpened the witch's appetite. With the poison plot stalled and the house still defiant, the conspirators' malice ripened into something bolder, something deadly. In a lonely clearing beneath the black canopy of the Holts, Alice Dirk gathered with Jacob and her son Abel, their faces lit by the flicker of a secret fire. "Gold won't come for curses," Alice rasped, "but it will come for terror. Fire, Jacob. Fire will loosen his grip, and in the confusion my Abel will seize the girl. You'll have your share of gold, and I'll have my vengeance." Abel grinned, his eyes wild with anticipation. "Let the night blaze, mother. I'll be waiting in the thicket. The moment Hester runs, she's mine." And so it was settled. When midnight crowned the woods in silence, Jacob crept from the house. He piled combustibles beneath the barn and the ricks, his hands trembling with a mixture of fear and greed. The match was struck, the flame caught, and soon the wind carried the glow through the trees, a growing, hungry light against the darkness. Far above, the owls scattered. The barn and ricks blazed, sending columns of smoke and sparks skyward, visible for miles across the silent fields. Alice and Abel watched from the shadows, triumphant, while Jacob returned to the house, feigning alarm. "Master! Master! The barn's on fire! For God's sake, sir, get up!" Hester woke to the smell of smoke, panic rising in her chest. She ran to her father's room, pleading with him to escape. Yet the old man sat rigid, clutching his precious chest of gold, his mind broken by fear and obsession. "What girl? Harm befall us with 10,000 pieces of gold at our side? No, no. It will rob the fire of its power. We shall defy the world." Desperate, Hester rushed from the house, calling for help, but outside, in the choking haze, Abel Dirk waited to pounce. Yet fate, in that moment, took a different turn. In the undergrowth nearby, the woodsman Giles Harwood, drawn by the blaze and suspecting wickedness, watched and listened. As Abel lunged for Hester, Giles raised his gun. A single shot rang out through the crackle and roar of the flames, and Abel fell, clutching his side. But the fire showed no mercy. Its hunger grew insatiable. Hester, frantic, dashed back inside to save her father, but it was too late. The roof weakened by the flames, crashed down with a hellish roar, burying both father and daughter together in death as they had been in life.
Oh, you'll never leave these woods alone.
When dawn crept over the scorched and twisted wreckage of Growley House, it brought no comfort. The fields were blackened, the air thick with the stench of soot and grief. Word of the night's horror spread like wildfire across the villages, and by sunrise neighbours gathered at the edge of the Holts, eyes wide with fear and fury. In the ruins, they found the shattered remains of David Wingfield and his beloved Hester, entwined in the embrace of death, and beside them the battered chest of gold, untouched by the flames, its curse unbroken. But there was more. Abel Dirk, wounded and desperate, was seized by the mob before he could slink away into the woods. Weak and bloodied, he confessed not only to the night's crime, but to a litany of wickedness shared with his mother Alice. His words stoked the villagers' anger beyond control. Justice of a sort came swift and merciless. Abel was dragged to a great old tree and hanged as the first rays of sunlight cut through the morning mist. Alice Dirk, the wise woman, fared little better. She was found cursing and raving by Witch's Pond, and there, with no more ceremony than a stone thrown in anger, she was plunged into the stagnant waters, left to the judgment of powers older than any village law. The law, in those days, was as frail as the autumn leaves. Justice belonged to the mob, and no one mourned the fate of the witch or her son. In time, the blackened ruins of Growley House were swallowed by ivy and silence. The chest of gold passed to distant kin, and Giles Harwood, whose courage in the night had saved Hester from a still worse fate, was quietly rewarded. Yet the shadow that had fallen over Chedington Woods did not easily lift. So the years passed, and the villagers whispered of a curse, a place where sunlight seemed to falter, and even the birds grew silent. The pond where Alice Dirk met her end grew rank and green, and none would drink its waters or cast stones across its surface. For it was said the land itself remembered, the gold, the fire, the greed, and the price paid by all who had played their part. All that remained was legend, dead calm beneath the trees, silent shadows where no birds sang, and the memory of a house that vanished in flame and sorrow. So then, there you have it, dear viewers. As we close this chapter and draw to an end, I am almost certain that you will have questions. Perhaps the first question will be regarding the fate of Jacob Rumsey, the servant who was complicit and actually responsible for the murder on that fateful evening. Well, history does not yield any fruits here. It is said that Jacob disappeared on that night, a night of which we have no date or direct reference, aside from this book you see here in my very hands. There are records to be found on the Ancestry website for a one Jacob Rumsey from around the same era our story is set during the 1600s. This story comes to us from the book Ghosts and Legends of South Somerset by former editor of the Western Gazette, G.F. Munford. Originally published in 1922, we have sourced all material from this very book. For some time, our research team has been trying to locate the exact location of Growley House. We know that this story took place at Chedington Woods, which is now part of the Wyke Farm estate, just next to South Perrott on the Somerset-Dorset border. From the description of Growley House and its location in the book, using LiDAR and comprehensive 3D maps, we believe that we have indeed located the exact position where the house once stood. As you can see here, and marked by the red circle, this is the area where at Chedington Woods we believe Growley House or a similar structure once stood. The site can be accessed by a public footpath coming from North Perrott, or one can walk from South Perrott along the public footpath to access the forest track which passes by the site. A word of caution though, the woods are private property, and there is an ongoing nature reserve project being spearheaded by Wyke Farm nearby. As for the graves of David Wingfield and his daughter Hester, we can find no trace of them in the local area, and in fact, if you can help us locate where they may be buried, then please let us know in the comments section below. We believe they died sometime in the mid-1600s, but verifying the exact details of this story have proven tricky, although we are certain there is some very good truth here. Witches were not uncommon in South Somerset. Nearby Crewkerne has the famous Nan Bull's grave, also known as Anne Bull, an evil witch who was buried on the crossroads beyond the beech trees of Malden Beach. Well, my dear viewers, it is past my bedtime in this late hour of the night. I want to wish you well, and thank you for your loyal subscribing to our channel, the Crewkerne Gazette, a thrift store of the unexpected, and a place where you can find some of the forgotten history and folklore of Great Britain. I am not joined by my son Jeremy today. As you can see, he is otherwise preoccupied with further cases to bring toward your attention at a time very close to us now. With that, good night, and don't let the witches bite.